What's up guys, welcome back to the Greer Music channel. So got some new gear into my studio. Got this guy, the Akai MPC One. Now I've only had this for a few days, so I thought it might be fun to do a first impressions video. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. Okay, so this really is a first impressions video. I've only had this for 4 or 5 days, so I have not explored everything about the device yet. I don't know everything there is to know about the MPC One. This is not going to be an exhaustive tutorial or extremely scientific approach to reviewing this. This is literally just me in the studio, a few days, making a few beats, giving you my first thoughts. This might be fun to look at in a year or something to see how I still feel about it. But if you're on the fence, this might give you some thoughts if you're thinking about getting one of these. So, first off, I will say this is my first of the new series of MPCs. I've owned others in the past. I've owned the 2500. I have a 500. So I'm not new to MPCs, but I am new to this new breed of MPCs. In addition to that, I have owned all the Roland SPs. I've got a lot of different hardware that incorporates sequencers and sampling. So I'm not a noob to music making. So that probably gives me somewhat of an advanced feel going into something like this than maybe somebody who's brand new to any kind of music hardware. That being said, I still think this one is pretty easy to pick up, not only compared to other MPCs, but in general, because it is basically a DAW in a box. It's basically a DAW built into a multi-touch screen tablet with a dedicated hardware controller and audio interface built around it. That's pretty much it in the nutshell. That being said, the workflow is still very much MPC based. So if you're familiar with MPCs and you understand the concept of projects, sequences, tracks, programs, all of those things, all of that is still here. And that allowed me to identify things that I recognized from previous workflows and be able to use them very quickly in making music on this. I think I got up and running and was programming my first beat in probably 10 minutes, not even reading the manual or anything like that. So I will say that for an MPC, I think it's quite easy to use. I know some folks are kind of on the fence about this whole screen thing. It's different, you know, it's new, but for me personally, being visually a visual learner, I found it very, very helpful. And you can see here you've got you know, great views of your sequences, of automation, all kinds of things are in here that are very, 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 very much like a DAW. So if you're familiar with making music on Ableton or Cubase, there's a lot of things here that'll seem familiar. So ease of use, so far I rate it probably like a 9 out of 10. But that's, again, I've been in this realm for a while, so if you're brand new, you might struggle a little bit. But for me, I found it quite easy to pick up on. Now, there's still things to learn. I haven't explored every feature that it has, but so far it's been pretty intuitive. So that's one thing I really like. The pads I'll talk about next. I love the colors on the pads. I like how you can change the colors. The different colors mean different things. Again, a very visual cue to what's going on. I like them. That being said, they don't squish. Like, they do a little bit, but not like the old pads. The velocity, for better or worse, it's easier. Like my MPC 500, to get full velocity, you had to like wham, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad in your book. It feels different, though. I'll say it that way. They're also a little bit smaller, and I think that's because what I have is the MPC One. I think the Live 2, and X, I think the pads are probably closer to what you're used to from like the 2000s, the 3000s, the 2500s, those kinds of things. I think I've read that they're a little bit bigger. So that being said, my hands are not that big. I do not have a musician's hands, unfortunately, but I find these more than sizable enough to use. I've had no issues feeling like the pads were too small. And again, I use SPs and the pads are smaller on all of those, so no big deal there. Maybe because the pads are lighter in sensitivity is because of the build quality. I will say The unit feels very lightweight. The sides are plastic. Not gonna lie, it's a little bit disappointing. I feel like my MPC 500 actually weighs more, and it's, you know, maybe half the size of this device. So take that with a grain of salt. Personally, I like when things have a kind of a heft to them. It seems reassuring. But I don't have any doubt that it's well made. I think this will probably last for a long time. A couple things I do like about the build. They put the headphone jack on the front here. If you've watched my other videos, you know that that's like a thing for me. I love when the headphone's on the front. It just doesn't make sense to me to put it in the back. So I like that. Let's see. What else? Oh, man. So I'm sure you already know about this, but one of the coolest things in this device is the fact there are instruments built into it. Plugins, actual VST instruments. And MPCs to me have always been purely sampler based. Like even with files, I don't even transfer them to my MPCs. I literally just go and live sample every sound that I want into my MPCs. But I was messing around with this thing. I loaded up some drum kits, and I was like, okay, I want some instruments. And I was like, VST. Let's just look and see what they do. And if I go into, let's see, Program Edit, there's a dedicated button for Program Edit as well, but I find myself going to the screen. You can see here that there are tons of parameters, and this is just one VST. There's three, but they're quite competent in building a wide range of sounds. So the VSTs are really neat. There's also a ton of VST effects. I mean, just a massive list. Let's see, let's get back over here. If I go into Browse and I go into Instruments, these are all VST, either instruments or effects, and there's a ton there. So very cool. I love the VSTs. I don't know if they're going to beat my synths that I have in the studio, but it sure as heck beats nothing. So you can be up and making full grooves straight out of the box. You don't need anything else. So that's very cool. This has gone from being just a sampler sequencer to being a full groove box workstation. So right on for that, Akai. Let's see. I will mention a couple other things here. Now, I want to talk a little bit next about the MPC software, because when you get this, you are able to register it and get a free license for the full MPC DAW. And that goes for the Live, the MPC Studio as well, but it's for the One too. And it's basically a full recreation of this entire system, but virtual in your computer. So that's really nice, and it's a competent DAW. But that being said, I had a hard time getting my computer to recognize this. After installing drivers, after installing software, registering, all these different steps that you have to go through, which took me probably a good 30-45 minutes, with rebooting the computer, all those kinds of things, it still had a hard time of wanting to recognize this machine when I tried to connect it to the software. So I eventually did get there by a few more reboots and rechecking the drivers, but it was finicky. I'll put it that way. And again, your system may vary. You may be Mac, Windows, different OS. I'm sure that's kind of what makes it hard to have a universal experience there, but I did have a little bit of trouble. At the end of the day, though, I don't use that DAW. I have a separate DAW that's my DAW of choice. I have controllers that are already all mapped to it. So I don't really need this to be a DAW controller. I got this specifically to be a standalone device. I want to be able to just dive into this one machine and make full compositions, and I think it's more than adequate to do that. There's a lot more for me to learn. Some things that I'm excited to get into is creating key groups, which is basically this thing where it'll automate multi-sampled instruments. So I could send the sequencer basically to a synth, and it'll play a range of notes, sample each one, and then it'll create a full virtual instrument around all of those notes. So it's not just pitching a center C, but it's literally creating a C, a D, and all the semitones between. So very cool. I'm going to dive into that next because I love the functionality. Some other cool things about it: it will control CV instruments. I've got some other analog synths in here. I'm going to try sequencing with it like that. So that's a very, very nice to have. Not a reason I bought it personally. Not into Eurorack, but it's really cool that it's there. So yeah, I mean, basically, I'm very happy with it. I think it's an excellent value. I think it gives you a whole lot, and then with the expansions, the added instruments, the plugins, the free DAW that Akai gives you, there's a lot to like about these new MPCs. I don't know if I'm going to get rid of my 2500 and my 500 yet, because for one, I just like them. They endear me, or I'm endeared to them, or however that term goes. I don't want to get rid of them, basically. But this guy is pretty sick, and less than a week in, I'm pretty stoked with it. So that's it for me right now. I'll play out with a little beat that I made on this on Sunday, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya. Bye.